I saw a horse walk into a bar one time.
Is this a joke?
No, it's a story. So the horse walks up to the bartender and orders a Manhattan. Bartender makes a drink, hands it to the horse. The horse looks at it, says, "Did you just shake my Manhattan?" Bartender says, "Yeah, it's a cocktail. I use the cocktail shaker." Horse says, "Look, I'm a horse. And even I know a Manhattan must be stirred. You never shake a Manhattan." Bartender says, "Look, I'm a busy fella, all right? Got a lot of customers. And if I'm going to shake your drink, I'm going to shake it. You can drink it or not. I don't care." The horse takes a sip of the Manhattan, spits it back out, says, "What kind of vermouth did you put in this?" Bartender says, "Vermouth. Vermouth is vermouth." Pulls out a bottle of dry vermouth. And the horse about loses his mind at this point. He's like, "You put dry vermouth in my Manhattan? It is not a martini, sir. A Manhattan is made with sweet vermouth, and any bartender worth his salt would know that." The bartender looks at him and says, "I don't need any lip off of some horse, all right? Now you can get the hell out of my bar." The horse starts putting its hooves in its own mouth and starts pulling at his hooves, and the skin around his ankle starts tearing. Horse blood starting to gush out onto the bar. He pulls his own hooves off of his legs with his mouth, and out of the ankle holes emerge two human hands. And then the hands reach into the horse's mouth and start pulling open its jaws wider and wider until they snap, and horse teeth are flying all over the place. And then out of the neck hole emerges the head of John Taffer. It was an episode of Bar Rescue. And he had disguised himself in a living horse flesh exoskeleton so that no one would recognize him. He could get a better feel for the place. It was disgusting. A priest, a rabbi, and a prostitute walk into a bar. Is this a joke? No, it's still a story. They sit down, the bartender's cutting limes. He says, "Hold on, I gotta go switch out the kegs." He leaves and the priest starts talking. Says, "I had a man come into my church. Tells me, 'Father, I no longer believe in God.' So I explained to him about the fires of hell and eternal damnation. Instills the fear of God back in the man." The rabbi says, "Oh, you Catholics and your fear. I had a similar man come to me. He said, 'Rabbi, I no longer believe in God. But the Torah teaches us to explore and question our faith.' So after some conversation and my wise counsel, he came to his own conclusion that he still believed in God." And they both look at the prostitute and say, "What about you? How would you make a man believe in God?" And the prostitute picks up the knife that the bartender was using, says, "Oh, I just introduced them." And she stabs the rabbi's hand, pinning him to the bar. The priest makes a run for the door. Her tongue extends out of her mouth, wraps around his ankles, and pulls him down to the floor. He digs his fingernails into the hardwoods, but it's of no use. She reels him back in, and her jaw unhinges, and she begins to swallow him whole like some great python. He screams as his feet and legs begin to dissolve in his stomach acids. By the time she gets the priest all the way down, the rabbi has freed himself. He's holding the knife. He says, "Young lady, I don't want to hurt you, but I will if it means saving my life." She lunges towards him. He stabs her in her swollen belly. She looks down and she smiles and pulls the knife deep inside of herself. The knife wound opens up and wraps around the rabbi's hand and begins absorbing him, arm first, then the head, then the rest of the body. And now that she's consumed both the priest and the rabbi, she is bloated and huge, and she rolls over onto her back, and her arm and leg bones begin to crack like glow sticks, and her ligaments and head suck inside of herself. And then the bartender comes back, and he sees this mound of pulsating flesh there at his bars. He walks over to it and he sees the prostitute's belly button right there on top. It begins to split at the seams and peel open, and then out emerges the head of John Taffer. It was another episode of Bar Rescue. Oh, you had 3 customers here. You didn't take their orders. The line should have been done before you opened. You're back there ding-donging around with the kegs. You should have been taking care of the customers that were at your bar. Not to mention you left a knife out that any psycho could have grabbed and used. You're going to be liable for that. Shut it down! Boy, was he heated. John Taffer walks into a bar, and no, this is still a story. He sits down and the bartender goes, "Oh my God, John Taffer, is this an episode of Bar Rescue? Are you about to shut me down?" John Taffer says, "No, don't worry, I'm just here for a drink. In fact, I am done rescuing bars because it doesn't matter how many smart tap systems I install, how many fusion menus I implement, how many custom cocktails I design, there are always more bad bars. For every bar I rescue, 10 more terrible bars take its place. It is an unkillable hydra, and I'm tired." The bartender says, "Wow, so you don't care that I've been over-serving those customers?" John says, "No, get them hammered." Bartender says, "So you don't care that I don't know the difference between a martini and a Manhattan?" John Taffer says, "No, just serve beer." And the bartender says, "So you don't care that I scoop ice like this?" And he grabs a glass off the countertop and he scoops the ice with the glass itself chipping the rim. John Taffer says, "No, serve the customers ice with broken glass in it for all I care. I'm done." And the bartender takes the broken glass and he starts carving his face up with it, cutting his forehead skin, then down along his jawline in one large circle all the way around, and blood is just dripping down onto the floor. He grabs his forehead skin and he rips down in one swift motion, pulling his whole face off. And underneath that face is the bloody face of John Taffer. And John Taffer looks at John Taffer and he says, "No, John Taffer would ever accept a bar in this condition, which means you ain't no John Taffer." And he pulls a glowing amulet out of his pocket and he shows it to the other John Taffer and he says, "Reveal yourself, doppelganger! Reveal yourself! Show me your true form!" The other John Taffer starts vibrating violently. His skin starts breaking apart like a fine porcelain, cracks forming, light streaming out. He shatters into a million pieces, and then standing there, where John Taffer once stood, was the naked, glistening body of Guy Fieri. And Guy looks at John and he says, "It's me, John. It's always been me. Now let me take you to Flavortown." And he reaches over the bar, grabs John Taffer by the neck skin, pulls him in close, and they start Frenching hard. Hard, wet Frenching. It was an episode of Celebrity Love is Blind. And those two had really hit it off in the pods.